Welcome to Story Chat Radio. We are book editors Carly Hayward and Jenny Chappelle. Every month we watch a different movie with an eye for storytelling and novel writing.
We use our years of training and experience editing novels to break down each movie's storytelling elements to help you improve your novel in progress.
Warning, Jenny ruins everything.
Hey, you ruin things too.
So don't be surprised if there are spoilers.
On this episode of the podcast, we are discussing the cult classic epic fantasy Willow, and then we'll end with a critique of one lucky author's query. You can support the podcast on Patreon, where you can read the queries we critique, plus get lots of other bonus content, including monthly writing chats with Carly and me, and the most adorable Story Chat Radio stickers. It's easy to find. Just go to patreon.com/storychatradio. And we are also very excited that our podcast is now available on YouTube. So right now, pause the show, head over to YouTube. The link is on our site and Linktree on social media. Subscribe and then come back. We'll wait.
All right, here come the spoilers. There's a prophecy that says a child with a particular birthmark will bring about the downfall of Queen Bavmorda. So, of course, she imprisons all pregnant women in an attempt to stop the prophecy. But the midwife sends the baby downstream on a raft. Willow is a farmer and amateur magician, and he finds the baby and is chosen by the town council to return her. Against their better judgment, Willow gives the baby to the first person they meet, a warrior named Madmartigan. There we go. But brownies steal the baby from Madmartigan. The brownie queen tells Willow he has been chosen to protect the baby, whose name is Alordanen, and then gives him a magic wand, directs him to a sorceress for help, and sends along 2 brownies as guides. Bavmorda's daughter, Sorsha, is after them, but after a couple close calls, they make it to the sorceress, only to find she has been turned into a rodent by the evil queen. Sorsha captures them, and they manage to escape and find the castle the brownie queen said would give them protection. But it's under a spell, and all its inhabitants are frozen in ice. Madmartigan, refusing to give up hope, prepares for Sorsha's attack while Willow fails to transform the sorceress into human form. Sorsha and her army arrive, but so does an army led by Madmartigan's old friend. During the ensuing battle, Sorsha changes sides, but Bavmorda's general captures the baby and takes her to the evil queen. As our heroes prepare to storm the castle to rescue her, Willow finally returns the sorceress to her true form, and she puts a spell on the camp to protect them from Bavmorda's magic. The next day, during the battle, Willow saves the baby from Bavmorda's murderous ritual at the last moment, and Bavmorda is destroyed, in part by her own magic. He leaves the baby in the caring arms of Madmartigan and Sorsha, then returns happily to his village and his family with a gift from the sorceress, a book of magic to study. Jenny, what'd you think about the movie?
I want a book of magic to study.
I know. Give.
Yeah, so like a lot of these movies that we have watched that are for old people, I saw this movie when it first came out because I'm old. And I probably haven't seen it since I was a kid. Like, I think I saw it a couple times as a kid, but I don't think I've seen it again since then. And so watching it again as an adult, there's definitely that sense of nostalgia. Do I think this is the most original story ever? Nope, not at all. It's basically all the standard epic fantasy tropes, and there's nothing really in it that I think is as obsession worthy as a lot of the other fantasies that are out there. But I think it's a good standard fantasy. And I think I was really surprised at how well some of it held up, especially like the costumes and special effects. Like, you never know how those old movies are going to translate when you watch them years, decades later. But I think this movie has a lot of appeal to anyone who's a fan of classic fantasies or like D&D style adventures.
Yeah.
What did you think?
So, because I'm not an old I am. I'm just kidding. I totally am. I hadn't seen this movie before, but it is one of those I was always kind of aware of, and one that I assumed I'd enjoy. It's such like a cult favorite, and I always love those. But you can never tell if it's going to translate past that like nostalgia feeling that people have. And I really enjoyed it. There was definitely some old tropes I didn't love, and there was our classic secondary female character that I actually wanted to know more about, Sorsha. Like, she falls in love with Mad Mardigan. She changes sides. We get none of that backstory.
I know, right?
Like, nothing to do with her and her mother, who she clearly must dislike. Maybe. I don't know.
But is also, like, doing her bidding.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's going on there?
There's a complex relationship, and we touch on none of it.
Exactly, because we don't care.
Because we don't care.
Let's watch the brownies do some slapstick instead.
Exactly. But speaking of, though, our classic secondary female character, we haven't had one in a while where I was like, oh, I want to hear about her instead of the rest of this frickin' movie. Are movies getting better at that?
I'm not sure that's the case. I think we needed a return to those roots. And Willow gave us that.
It did. It sure did. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I think my husband would like it. I would make him watch it. I forget what the element I was telling him about, and he was like, oh, that sounds like Star Wars. And I was like, well, actually, it is George Lucas, so you're correct.
It's true.
It wasn't as funny as, like, The Princess Bride, which I feel like is the other cult from around then.
Yeah.
I definitely could have done without the brownies and their slapstick. But it had fun moments, and I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked it.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at.
I think it's one of those movies that, like, has a very broad appeal. Like,
yes,
it does have that slapstick humor in it. It has, you know, stuff for little... I think the brownies were very much to appeal to, like, little kids.
Yeah.
You know. So, like, it's definitely, like, a very broad kind of appeal.
Yeah, it was good. All right, so Jenny, what is something this movie does well that writers can use in their own work?
Let's talk about the magic system in this movie. Like I said before, there's nothing here that's like super fresh or anything, but I think this particular movie makes a really good study in magic systems for a couple of reasons. First, the magic system is fairly standard. It's not very hard to understand, and that really lets us look at like how it works within the world and the story. It also has a few different elements at play. So, for example, we have magical creatures like the brownies, and then we also have magic users like the sorceress and Queen Bavmorda. And then we also have like enchanted items and potions. Carly, you mentioned you could have done without the brownies, but I felt like that about the whole love potion scene.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Drinks this love potion and falls in love with Sorsha, and she's just like the most beautiful creature he's ever seen. I definitely could have done without that whole thing.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't kiss her like that.
Yeah.
Oof, I was real close to being mad.
Yeah, seriously. But she was pretty awesome in that scene still. I'm just saying.
She was.
I try not to think about the fact that they got married in real life after that.
Oh, they did? I didn't know that.
No, yeah, I don't think they were married for a super long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Love potion scene, not my favorite. So, yeah. Anyway, we also have this character, Willow, who wants to use magic. So, like, we get to see him learning and making mistakes, which I think is a great mechanism for showing your viewers or your readers how something in your story works. And I actually really liked the scenes with him using magic, because even though they were like partially comic relief, like when he changes her into a goat, they also showed like progression, and they give us clues about how the magic works in their world. So like at one point he's trying to change the sorceress back into her human form, which is like his main magical goal through the movie. And she mentions not to forget one word of the incantation, because that's the word that like pleads for change or something to that effect. My editor brain kind of perked up at that detail. So yeah, like the rest of the movie, the magic system isn't necessarily super original or special, but I think it's a great choice for writers to learn more about how to make magic systems work in their own stories.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so what makes for a good magic system? Limitations. Without limits, there's nothing your character can't do, and that's not fun. I always tell people to torture their characters, and here is a good place to do it. So, if everything is possible and everything is easy, there's no conflict, no plot, no growth. In order to avoid an easy magic system, you need structure and limitations. So in this movie, Willow can't just easily bring the sorceress back. He has to work at it and practice. There are limitations. And limitations lead to rules and structure. So you need solid rules by which the magic works. Think of it like your magic physics. What is possible? What is impossible? How is the possible achieved? And what are the drawbacks? So solid magic systems have all 4 of these items fleshed out. You never want to run into a moment at the end of your story where you create a new rule to get the plot to go in the direction you want. A deus ex machina, or a god from the machine, is often the antithesis of a good magic system. If you've done the work on your magic system, the plot should react to it naturally. That doesn't mean you can't break the rules as your character understands them, but it all must make sense as you and the reader understand the magic system. So a good magic system upholds your world and plot. It doesn't cater to it. So create strong rules and have your characters learn how to work within the rules. The next step to creating a good magic system is creating drawbacks or stakes. So once your magic system has rules and limitations, it needs dangers to balance it out. If there are no repercussions to magic, if there is no catch, then everyone would be able to use it to achieve the best ends for themselves. Sometimes those catches are created by non-magic users themselves, aka everyone is at odds with each other so no one can achieve their goals. Or sometimes the magic has a side effect, an equal or greater reaction. Physics. Magic is real in your world. It comes from somewhere, it has limitations, and it has repercussions. So maybe it is scarce. Maybe when you make something, something else must be unmade. Maybe for every good thing you get from it, you get an equally bad thing. Again, think of it like physics. For every action, there is a reaction. How does magic respond to being used? If you structure your magic system with all of this in mind, it's going to lead to lots of fun interactions within your story.
So we need boundaries.
Boundaries.
I'm not great with those.
No. Same.
Also, it might not be fun for a reader if their magic doesn't have any limitations, but wouldn't that be fun for a character? Just magic can do everything. That'd be amazing.
Fun. I like that.
So, we're always talking about on this podcast, there aren't really elements of storytelling that don't overlap with basically all the other elements in some way.
Seriously.
And magic systems are really no different. So it's really important to consider how the magic system affects the rest of the story elements and vice versa. I think one of the things that comes to mind when we talk about magic systems is world building. I mentioned before that there are magical creatures like brownies in this movie, as well as people who learn to use magic, and then they can enchant objects that anyone can use. So one of my favorite little parts is near the end when Willow throws the enchanted acorn and Bavmorda grabs it. Because you kind of think yay, he finally got to use one, and it's going to be, it's really going to count this time because she's going to turn to stone. But then, no, her magic is so strong, she can basically reverse the enchantment. And all I could think about was saving throws in D&D.
Totally.
So when you're creating a magic system, really consider, again, like Carly said, how's the magic used? Who can use it? Who can't? All of that stuff. And then think about how they might use that in their world. So one of the reasons I really love contemporary fantasy is because it plays with this concept a lot. We've seen a lot of magic over the years, over the hundreds of years of writing stories. We've seen a lot of it in medieval type settings like this movie. But so how does magic work differently in a different setting? Just as importantly, though, how does the world work differently because of the ability to use magic? So, how might magic users in your world live very differently because they can use magic for things we consider to be mundane activities? So, for example, I would literally never, ever commute anywhere ever again if I could just poof there instead.
Seriously.
Like, why would you ever drive anywhere?
No.
So, like, other than world building, consider how magic is going to affect your plot. How does the use of magic and its limitations create and resolve conflict? In a lot of magic systems, like Carly was saying, we'll see this trope of like all magic has a price. And thinking along those lines can really help you give your magic like its own interesting spin. So if your magic users have to consider what they have to give up, that's going to change like how and when they use their magic. But also, how might using magic get your character into trouble? How does it interact with the other plot points of the story? Theme is another area where your magic system can say a lot. Magic inherently deals with power. We've already touched several times on like who has it and who doesn't, and how does that create those power differentials. And so it can be a really compelling metaphor for real world power differentials. And then, of course, there's character. But I'm going to let Carly talk about that.
Ooh, I get to talk about character. That's always fun. But I want to touch on the thing you were just saying about power. And I think one of the good limitations or structures that this magic system has is that the queen is so much more powerful than everybody else. Like, you think this stone he has, or this acorn he has, is going to turn her into stone because he was given it at the beginning, but she's too powerful, so he has to think and work and like try to figure out how to get around her in a way that she wouldn't expect, because it's not just magic that solves the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So,
but then she reverses it. That's the cool part, Carly.
That's what I'm saying, because she reverses it, so then he has to use like misdirection and fake magic to actually defeat her. It's great, because he's not powerful enough, because he has limitations.
Woo!
We did it. Okay. So, how does a magic system affect your character? The obvious place to start is if your characters are magic users, and whether or not they are magic users, what is their level of understanding of magic? That was a mouthful. I don't think I worded that well, but how much do they understand their magic? One of the best ways to break rules in regards to your magic system is to have your characters have a limited understanding of the magic system. You can break a magic system rule if it was never a rule to begin with. Your character just thought it was. So their level of understanding is what will help you convey your system to the reader. So really think about where you want them to be. So like the biggest trope is having the main character be new to magic, kind of like Willow is, completely unfamiliar with it, a novice. It's the easiest one because then readers can learn about the system and its rules along with the character. But you can also have them have a solid understanding as long as they find ways to convey that understanding to your readers. Next, you want to think about the society around the magic system. Can everyone use it? Is it secret or open to the world? How do non-magic and magic users feel about each other? Are there different types of magic users? Is there a hierarchy? How does the society as a whole respond to magic? It's important to think of your magic system as something that is within your book's culture. Culturally, how do your characters feel about and react to magic? In this movie, magic is valued and rare. Willow spends the beginning part of the movie wanting to impress everyone with his magical potential so that he can be taken on as an apprentice. Magic comes with clout. It makes you impressive and valued. In other stories, magic is feared or forbidden. These are all cultural and societal responses to the system you've created. The more limitations you have, the more you'll be able to figure out how your characters will respond to your magic system. If it is scarce, maybe they value it, like in this movie. If it is abundant, maybe other talents are valued more. As you kind of structure your story and your system, it's important to take into consideration how your characters feel and interact with the magic itself. Yeah.
That's deep.
Thank you. I'm very deep.
You are. You are. Especially today. I don't know.
Oh, wow. Weird.
I know.
Okay.
Okay, so how do you know if your magic system needs work? Of course, feedback is one way, classic. Sometimes that feedback might be magic feels too easy or doesn't seem to have enough limitations. I don't know why I keep thinking limitations.
Weird. I don't know.
I know.
It's so
It's just
weird.
like that word is in my head.
Huh.
It can also be sort of the opposite, that the magic system is too complex or isn't explained well enough. If you're like an all vibes, no plot kind of writer, you might have problems like this and need to flesh out your magic system more. I've talked to a lot of writers, pantsers, especially who, haven't necessarily thought through all of those little intricate details of their magic system. And so I'll say like, well, how does your magic system work? What are the limitations? And they'll be like, what?
So I know you said pantsers, but I heard panthers, and I think we should
Panthers?
refer to them as panthers now.
Okay, that's better anyway.
Thank you. Continue.
Everything that is about cats makes it better.
I agree.
So even if you are a writer who has a very meticulously detailed magic system, you might not be managing to get the right information on the page, or you might even be giving too much information, so it all feels kind of info dumpy. If your magic system is feeling off to you or your readers, really kind of consider all these elements we've been talking about. And I have a tool that might help. I love a good reverse outline, and you can do something similar as it specifically relates to your magic system. So in other words, you create like a separate document where you track magic throughout your story, scene by scene. How is it used? What do you reveal about it? How does it impact the plot, setting, theme, character, etc.? What are you showing the reader versus what are you telling them? Like with anything in a story, knowing what to show and what to tell can make a huge difference. So sometimes it can just come down to that. Studying other magic systems, like in other stories, other worlds, and breaking them down the same way can help you get kind of out of your own brain a little bit too. So look at some of your favorite fantasies and how they use magic. I tend to gravitate toward magic systems that are somehow based on scientific concepts, whether that's like the conservation of energy. In other words, like if you use magic to create something, that energy has to come from somewhere, or if it's related to like the elements. So yeah, what kind of magic systems do you like, Carly?
Ooh, let's see. Okay, I love those too. I'm also kind of a sucker for like underground magic where not everyone knows about it, but you find out it opens up a whole other world. But that might be maybe magic could really be real showing.
I also have that. I feel like I've had that since I was in like 3rd grade and read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Totally.
And I'm still kind of just waiting for that to happen.
Yeah. When do I get the magic?
Yeah,
I'm waiting for it.
Bring it.
Bring it. I also really like it though when like someone comes up with a magic system I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Like something based on a mundane element of our world. Like what if we had a magic system based off of cleaning supplies?
Like in Hocus Pocus, when instead of riding on a broom, she's on the vacuum.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that.
I guess it's just potions and brooms. So cleaning supplies are not a good example.
But that's a new spin.
But it's a new spin.
There you go. Listeners, you can take that. I'm giving you permission to steal Carly's idea.
Great.
I want to see a fantasy series based on magical cleaning people.
Okay, perfect. I mean, I would totally watch that.
I would totally would too.
Either. All right. I get so we do see a lot of interesting magic systems based on like chemicals, which are aka potions, and others based on books, like in this one, and learning. So I would say any magic system that takes effort is kind of a big seller for me. And that leads me into how to improve your magic system. Hey. So have I mentioned limitations yet?
I don't think so. That's a good point.
Think so.
You really should have brought that up earlier.
I should have. We really should talk about those. Anyway, so improve it with limitations. I'm not going to get into that again because I already did that. Next, figure out how much of the system is revealed to your reader. Is it a soft or a hard magic system? A soft magic system doesn't really explain the magic at all, while a hard system explains all the rules and intricacies. No matter which system you choose, you still need to be aware of the limitations, but this will help you decide how much to convey to the reader. Soft systems only really work if you have soft repercussions for the magic. You don't want an easy fix coming in with no explanation. Most systems are going to fall somewhere in the middle. You want to have your characters interacting with the magic system, and by having them interact with it, you'll show readers what the system is. So like Jenny was saying, what did Jenny say? I totally lost my thing. Oh, yeah.
You lots of smart stuff. Jenny said lots of smart stuff.
Did she?
She did.
Okay.
She also talks about herself in third person sometimes.
Oh, no. Well, Jenny said smart stuff, and I was really deep. So, like Jenny was saying, you want to balance the show versus tell here. So use her reverse outline idea to figure out where you can show and when you need to tell something about the system. The key is to build the magic system throughout the story. It should build on itself as the character interacts with it more. Don't front load all the information, but also you don't want to reveal a rule at the last second that will solve everything and would have the entire time, had the characters just known about it. You want your characters to interact with the system early on in small ways that will later be reflected in the climax. So as I always say with world building, you need to kind of pepper it in as your characters come up against it. We can learn a lot about your magic system from small moments and interactions. Keep it part of the main conflict and part of your characters' lives, and it will organically thread throughout your story.
That's a very good point.
Thank you. Was it deep or smart?
Yes.
Cool.
Limitations. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about our favorite thing that we have to talk about in like every episode, and that is tropes.
Woo! Tropes.
One thing about this movie is that it really is like all the fantasy tropes thrown into a blender.
All of them.
It really is. When it comes to magic systems in particular, it's really important to know what has been done before so you can put your own spin on it and create something really new and interesting. I think when you were talking, Carly, about like using a character who is learning magic, I've read a couple of books recently that had really interesting spins on that. One of them was like the character who was new to magic because they didn't really know the rules. They basically broke all of the quote unquote rules and introduced the characters who did know all the rules to like a whole new way of doing things, basically.
Yep.
It was almost like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, if you're familiar with that. So like it was just a fun way to kind of take that trope of like, you know, the person who doesn't know the rules and kind of put a new twist on it. And so here, whenever you're studying tropes, it's really important to not just know about other books in your age category and genre, but also movies and TV shows as well. You have to remember that your reader is consuming all different kinds of storytelling. So knowing the expectations that your reader is bringing to the story is like the best way to make sure that you're creating something that can surprise and delight them. And of course, remember, tropes are not inherently bad. It's all about how you use them. So one thing I do want to mention here is that, which we've kind of touched on a little bit, is to consider the origins of the magic you use in your story. So this can go into representation of various cultures and backgrounds, and it's really important to understand how magic is sometimes used against groups of people. So, for example, demonic possession or dark magic as a reason for mental illness or physical disability can be really problematic, but it's still something that I see on a pretty regular basis. So you need to make sure that you're being very thoughtful about how you're using magic within the context of your story, but always be very mindful about how real life people will be impacted by your story.
That's a great point.
Thanks.
I guess you were deep this time and smart.
Wow. Thanks.
That never happens.
Great.
I'm just kidding. That happens a lot.
You ruined it. So that brings us to our query. Our query this month is adult literary fiction. Carly, what are your thoughts on this query?
Okay, so the story actually sounds really interesting and emotionally complicated, but like in the best way. I really like all of the emotional stakes we've got going on. It does need a good amount of work, though. What we're missing is kind of a solid query structure. It starts by giving us too much mundane information that we should learn from the body of the query, aka when and where it takes place. Next, it introduces each POV character in their own paragraph, which is perfect, but it doesn't end with enough stakes. The conflict is clear, but the stakes are lacking, and because of that, the conflict feels too soft and unimportant. Don't tell us what the story is meant to convey. Show us what is at stake for your characters so that we can feel what the story conveys. Basically, they can cut the entire 5th paragraph because you want your intro / hook paragraph, then one paragraph for each of the dual POV characters, and then a paragraph that brings their stories together and really shows the conflict and stakes that those characters are up against. So if with some structure, I think this could be really cool.
Yeah, I also thought the story sounds so poignant and lovely. And yeah, like you said, the query itself definitely needs some work. I just wanted to add that specifically, it's really important to know the conventions of your genre and age category. So this story is adult fiction, and the query says it's historical. Typically, what's considered historical will vary a little depending on your audience. A loose guideline for adults is usually 50 years in the past. Although that can vary some as well, especially if it's revolving around like a particular historical event. Historical for kids can be more recent and is often based around when the readers in that age category would have been born. So for children, 2006 could be historical, but for adults, it isn't. So whatever your age category and genre.
Brain.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
2006 is historical. No. Sorry, go ahead.
Whatever your age category and genre, just make sure you have a solid grasp on the expectations, because that makes a huge difference when you're querying.
See, now I definitely am an old. Jeez. All right. Anyway.
Compared to like a 3rd grader, indeed you are.
Indeed. Exactly. All right, so next month, we'll be watching the new multiverse movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'm so excited.
Me too.
Really
I can't wait.
It's going to be good.
Same.
We will also have another query or blurb critique if you want your query featured on the podcast. You can find the details about how to do that on our website or Twitter page.
You can find our podcast on our website, storychatradio.com, and now on YouTube. We need subscribers so we can get our personalized YouTube URL. So please, if you enjoy the show, subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many other streaming services. While you're there, please leave us a rating. You can support the show and get extra content at patreon.com/storychatradio. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at StoryChatRadio.
Thanks for joining in our nonsense.